Color shifting should be the initial goal you are trying to achieve when working with colors. This next step is more of an optional step and is based more on emotion and creating a feeling behind the work. So let's break down the differences. Let's start off by laying down a neutral gray to work upon so that we can see the hue identities behind everything going down here. As we discussed, only using black and white for the values creates a final product that is dull and lifeless. In this example, we can tell that this is a red mug with a light gray interior, but it's not very exciting, and the light source feels unrealistic. So let's take the same middle two base colors of red and this light gray, and then apply our color shifting theory. In this second example, even though the foundation colors were the same, we shifted the colors towards light and shadows using the combination of hue, saturation, and brightness. This mug feels much more interesting, especially in the shadows. Here's where you can end your exploration of color if you're looking to achieve a more realistic result. If you want to add some fantastical elements into your subject matter, this is when you can start experimenting. In this final mug, I took the liberties of adding colors I believed would work well against the base. Since the purple and pink color choices are considered analogous colors of red, the shifting creates an unrealistic result that is still in harmony. And I can honestly tell you this wasn't the first attempt, and that's the fun of working with color further. While the first experiment may result in a horrendous outcome, if you keep challenging yourself and the color selections, you may come out with a result that only heightens and enhances the overall feel and mood of the piece. I believe that color shifting is an important aspect to learn, and while I think it's also important to play with your intuition on color selection, both of these results can be considered final. It all depends on what you are looking to produce as an artist. And since I wanted to emphasize how much I believe that it doesn't take stronger brightness values to create a cool outcome, I purposely made the final two results more contrasted in saturation and hue over brightness. And that's why if we turn on this grayscale, we can see that both are less contrasted than the first, but are far more interesting when we add the color back. So let's take our initial red sphere and use a reference to create a final result using this fantastical intuition process. This doubles as a study on how to use references, not to only copy it exactly as it shows, but rather to use it as a reference point to suggest what forms, colors, and shading to work with. And as with anything that I create, it usually starts on a neutral gray background, and that's so that I can see the true hue identities of the colors I am working with. And I repeat that over and over throughout because I believe that it's very important that you don't start on a pure white or a pure black background, because then your colors will be more contrasted because of that. So try to work more on a neutral base. And since I want the end result to read as a red tomato, I'm laying down this very heavily red base foundation, and then I can play with fantastical color elements on top of that. But since I still want it to register to the viewer as a red tomato, I don't want to go overboard with the fantastical elements that I'm adding yet. And another thing that's kind of cool is with the stem of the tomato, I'm not using green colors. And that's something else I want you guys to try to experiment with, using colors that aren't exactly used from the reference, but are more on creating a harmony within the piece and using the colors you already have. Now for the background, rather than letting that gray kind of stand strong, I'm adding in this more tan color to really create an overwhelming sense of warmth throughout the piece. And I'm doing that so that when I add in these fantastical blues and violets in the shadow areas, it really creates this contrast and it directs your eye. It almost like demands the attention of the viewer to be looking there, and it creates this really cool contrast between the warmth and the cool colors that we're adding. And remember, this is just one of many ways going about your fantastical intuition. Maybe if I really wanted the tomato to read more warm, I would have the background colors be more cool. There's so many different possibilities. It all just depends on what you want to express to the viewer that's looking at it. So the next time you're working on a piece, I challenge you to trust your intuition and choose colors that are maybe more fantastical rather than realistic. And in doing so, you may surprise yourself with the results.